Welcome to another episode of Ask Me How I Know with Danielle, the coach. I am Danielle, the coach, certified life and leadership coach, and I help six-figure earners make courageous, purposeful transitions out of their well-paying 9 to 5 into full-time entrepreneurship without regret. In this space, I bring on other entrepreneurs, other great minds who are doing great things and doing purpose work in lanes of their own to help shed a little light on how we can have a better take at life and leadership in alignment with our purpose. And so I have a very special guest joining me tonight to have a conversation that is near and dear to my heart. And so one of the things that I know to be true is that as millennials, we are finding ourselves at two ends of the dementia spectrum. On one end, some of us are watching it happen to someone that we love, like a parent or a grandparent. And even just hearing me say that, it probably resonates and hits really close to home. And on the other end, some millennials are quietly carrying and navigating something that they haven't quite had the courage to say out loud yet. And it's that quiet is kept. Millennials have, frankly, entered the dementia chat. So, in true Danielle the Coach fashion, I'm joined by an expert and published author on the matter, Maggie Memory, who has so graciously allowed me to ask her exactly how she knows. So join me in welcoming Maggie Memory to the Ask Me How I Know with Danielle the Coach platform. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's the pleasure is mine. So the suspense has been building. I have received so much commentary in advance of our conversation tonight. So I know that there are a lot of people who can resonate across generations, and several people who have their own personal stories that relate to dementia, regardless of which end of that spectrum that I mentioned that they might be on. So to kick us off, who is Maggie Memory, and how did you become an expert on dementia?
Who is Maggie Memory? First of all, Maggie Memory loves the Lord. Let's just put that out there. Um, he is amazing in my life, even when I uh, um, use the provision of free will that He gives us. He still resonates in my life and allows me to move forward. I'm truly blessed. So Um, other than that, Maggie Memory, I am a speaker. I am a coach, a family coach, a professional coach in reference to dementia. I've spent the last 20 years improving my skill set, my knowledge base around this disease. I had my own personal misdiagnosis of dementia. As you can see, it still resonates with me today. Um, when I was 33, I was misdiagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia. And I promised the Lord that if I survived, because dementia is a terminal disease, that I would change the way that people looked, cared, and addressed people that live with dementia. And He allowed me that honor to still be here today to talk about it. And so here I am. I've been a family caregiver. I've been a CNA and LVN, RCFE, administrator, you name it. I've done the gamut in this field for the purposes of making sure that I could speak from both sides. And so, yeah, that's who Maggie Memory is.
First of all, you are a walking miracle.
I am.
I know I know we just unlocked Pandora's box with just that short snippet into your story. So I'm ready to dive in. I know we have a captive audience tonight. So if you're watching with us live, do us a favor and say hey, drop us a comment in the chat. Let us know where you're following from. And as we are sharing and as Maggie is dropping gems that I know she's going to, if you have questions, drop your questions in the comments as well, and we'll fuse them in. Trust me, I have plenty. So if you don't have any, I have plenty of questions for my good sis. But if you have some, I would like to fuse some of your questions in as well while we have the expert on the line. So, Maggie, it's common to hear dementia and Alzheimer's, even just hearing you talk about your misdiagnosis, right, of you were misdiagnosed with dementia.
Dementia. Just
Right.
dementia.
Just dementia. Okay. And so we hear the words dementia in common conversations. Dementia, we hear it thrown around. We hear Alzheimer's. And I know, and I can speak for myself, for a long time, I kind of categorized it one way in my mind and went about my business, right? Thinking I had a fundamental understanding. But help us, educate us on what the difference is between dementia and Alzheimer's.
All right. So I make it very simplistic. In my book, I use the definition that dementia is a disease that allows the brain to malfunction more so than an able mind. Now, that seems very simplistic. But at the end of the day, that's what we need in this disease in our community is simplicity. So dementia is any neurodegenerative disease that will not allow you to function as an able-minded person. So the Alzheimer's is a form of dementia, just as lung cancer is a form of cancer. And so when you hear someone, or if your doctor diagnoses you with dementia, I want you to think about this conversation and imagine if you walked into an oncologist's office and the oncologist said, you have cancer, but did not tell you the kind of cancer that you live with. And so that's the distinction and the analogy that I use because dementia is just the disease, and there's over 100 of them. And so Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. Frontal lobe is a form of dementia. Vascular is a form of dementia. And all of them come with different behavior modifications and different symptoms.
Wow, over 100 forms. If you just learned something like me and listening to Maggie, just type learn something in the comments, in the chat. Wow, I think we're in for a ride tonight. So there were so many directions that we could have taken this conversation. And I think it was your idea to kind of leverage the millennial angle, which I'm appreciative of, because even in preparing for this conversation, there are some things that I was exposed to, some things that I learned, but then also having been on one side of that spectrum, having watched two of my grandparents fight the vicious disease that it is, and literally rip them from my grasp. So I've seen it from the caregiver's perspective. I've seen it from the loved one's perspective. Um, in thinking about the things that you know, the things that you wouldn't know until you've seen it up front, it's just a different lived experience. And so I do have a heightened sensitivity to it. And I'm an avid supporter of research and continue education on the matter, just because it's something that sometimes hides in plain sight. And someone may look like they have all of their, faculties, but there may
Yes.
be something that is just not clicking like it used to. And it's not until you spend time, extended periods of time, where you're able to see those kind of like little nuanced things that are happening behind the scenes. Um, and so seeing them is one thing, but then how you manage and navigate them is another one. And so this is another reason why I'm glad to have you here with me, so you can help educate all of us on some of the do's and, pun intended, some of the don'ts as well. So speaking about the millennial piece, so you share some data with me. 1 in 6 millennial caregivers is caring for someone with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. 73% are employed full time while doing it. Hopefully, somebody watching just exhaled. We'll probably have an amen choir in the chat. 42% are doing it completely alone, which is just, it's heavy even just saying that out loud. So Maggie, when you see numbers like this, 1 in 6, 73% employed full time, 42% doing it alone, what do you want people to understand that the data alone can't say?
73% is a huge number. Now, one of the things I say is let's just do 73% on 73% on 100. So if you stand 100 people up, you pull out 73%, that's what's left standing. So 73% is a large number, but that does not begin to talk about the caregiving role, because that number sticks in your head. But imagine doing that when you have no support. When, just like you said earlier, this is a disease that you don't see physically until years down the line. And so if you tell someone my mother is living with Alzheimer's dementia and they sit next to her and have a conversation, you know, their thought may be, okay, I don't think it can't be that bad, right? But these are individuals, millennials are individuals, one, that don't get the support, especially from the corporate sector, for their loved ones living with dementia, because it's kind of like a hidden disease. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to say, oh, my mother has dementia or my father has dementia. And a lot of that has to do with, I'm scared they may think that I also have it. That's one. But then two, the other reason to that is that there's a load of, I'm by myself. I have to care for my mother. I have to care for my father. I have to make sure that they are not walking about. I have to make sure that they get to their doctor's appointment. All of this affects our jobs. And when corporate America is not recognizing that millennials, young people, are caregivers, then that too affects not just us, it affects the Black market. It affects everybody's market, because that takes the professionals out of the realm of what it is they need to do, because they're providing care alone.
More data. Black Americans are 2 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's or dementia than white Americans. 13 to 20% of Black adults, 65 plus, are living with dementia, matching diabetes rates. Yet the community conversations are not equitable when it comes to continued dialogue around dementia and its impacts, and also support and resources. So like the conversations don't even come close. And so there's a layer of the conversation at large and the conversation that we're having now that I want us to sit in for a moment, and thinking about the fact that Black Americans are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's, but the community conversations are nowhere near as close in comparison around dementia, and it doesn't match or mirror the urgency that we often see when it comes to other diseases that are affecting us at alarming rates. So with that said, from your expert vantage point, why do you think that gap exists? What is it costing our families? And what are you specifically doing to help close it?
Let me answer that. The first thing is, the reason why it exists is historical. Let's just take it there. Blacks are less likely to go to the doctor. We're less likely to be diagnosed if we do go to the doctor. We are less likely to be heard when we try to advocate at the doctor. And so all of those are historical references, right? In addition to that, most of us, including doctors, listen to what I'm saying, including doctors, do not recognize dementia. And in our community, specifically, the misdiagnosis of any kind of dementia is more than 10 to 1 in others. And so it mirrors the exact 2 to 1 ratio when it comes to individuals living with this disease. The second question, the answer to the second question is, at the end of the day, we as African Americans, Black Americans, often see our loved ones as, they do that all the time. My mom does it all. There's nothing wrong with my mom. They do it all the time. She used to do that when I was a little girl, or and so it's the whole concept of, is that really a disease? Because once again, you can't see it yet. And so because you can't see it, and we're visual people, if you can't see it, chances are in our minds, it's not there. The third question, what am I doing about it? My goal is to talk to as many people in the community as I can, to get the word out, to get the facts out about dementia. The fact that Alzheimer's dementia comes with different behaviors and different symptoms. Alzheimer's dementia comes with memory loss up front. That is normally how you can tell Alzheimer's dementia from another dementia. Not that the other dementias do not mimic memory loss, they do, but at the end. But Alzheimer's dementia, which is normally misdiagnosed and diagnosed in our community more often than not, that's the difference. Alzheimer's dementia comes with memory loss. It comes with looping. I talk about looping uh, in detail in my book. Looping is when a person makes the same statement over and over and over again.
Mhm.
That is very symptomatic to Alzheimer's dementia.
Mhm.
That's how you can tell. One of the differences you can tell from the dementias, right? Frontal temporal dementia comes with an entirely different symptom. The first symptom of frontal temporal dementia is personality changes. That's the first thing. And so and then the other part, well, I'm sure we'll cover this, but the other part, so what am I doing? I am trying to talk to as many people as I possibly can. My goal is to talk and train at least 1 million people about this disease. Because at the end of the day, what you don't know is what is going to hurt us more than anything. The earlier the diagnosis, the more you are apt to learn how to advocate for your loved one or yourself. And then two, to get the newest procedures, behavior modifications on the market. By the time you get to the 5th, 6th year of a diagnosis, there's not much anyone can do. The disease will continue to progress, and there's nothing really you can do except ensure that you know what behavior modifications you need to set forth.
Wow. You want to reach 1 million people, and it's absolutely, absolutely doable. And I know you are well on your way to doing that. And I'm grateful to kind of be a conduit to helping you reach more people and
Yes.
faster. And so kudos to you for um, using your story and turning it for good, using your experience and allowing God to use you to be a vessel to
Yes.
reach the masses and to not just have the conversation, but have a different conversation. Because I'm telling you, I have not heard anybody talking about it this way at all whatsoever. So just thank you for your light and what can be a a a dark space for some individuals and also some families who are slowly trying to figure it out and navigate it in a way that might not be the most comfortable right now. So
Yes.
let's talk about early onset dementia because your misdiagnosis was at the age of 33. And even I know we've had this conversation privately, and I know you just said it publicly here, right? But the age 33, it blows my mind every time I hear you say it and every time I think about it. 33 is when you first had had the misdiagnosis. Um,
Yes.
how long would you say that you were experiencing, I guess, some symptoms of something being different for you before the misdiagnosis happened?
I don't remember a lot of that era, that part of my life. So I'm going on what my husband and my family tells me. So I'm going to
Okay.
say probably about a year and a half, where I was getting lost in a place that I was totally familiar with. I used to run, and I would run and get lost in an area that I was familiar with. And my husband would put a quarter in my shoe, again, aging myself, because we didn't have cell phones. And so he would put a quarter in my shoe and, like, if you get lost, call me. Little did he know, or I knew, that him putting that quarter in my shoe meant nothing because I didn't remember that the quarter was in my shoe, which is relative to Alzheimer's dementia, which is why the misdiagnosis was made. So probably about a year and a half.
Wow. And in that same, and so that kind of makes it even, you were even younger when it first started to affect you. My mind continues to be blown with that. So what would you say are early signs that people, especially younger people, are most likely to like dismiss or explain away?
Okay. First of all, let's talk about early onset dementia.
Okay.
So, younger onset dementia, YOD, okay, early onset dementia implies that you were diagnosed early or that it's the early stage of the disease, right?
Okay.
Early onset dementia is not is terminology that is used. I prefer to use younger onset dementia because it differentiates the stage of the disease versus the age of the disease. So younger onset dementia is a diagnosis or symptoms thereof the disease prior to the age of 65. So I really want to delve into this because I'm talking about millennials.
Mm-hmm.
So most millennials think of Alzheimer's or any dementia as an old person's disease. Matter of fact, some millennials call it oldheimer's disease, right? And so Alzheimer's absolutely is a disease that is ordinarily diagnosed after the age of 75, right? Maybe after the age of 70. However, there is a disease that affects millennials more so than it affects other age groups. That dementia is frontal temporal dementia. It affects the frontal lobe, right? And I have had clients as young as 35 that have been diagnosed with this disease, with dementia. And so,
Wow.
younger onset dementia, I'm going to repeat it, is a diagnosis of dementia or symptoms thereof the disease of dementia before the age of 65. So, for millennials, you absolutely could be living with a dementia before the age of 65. So, again, frontal temporal dementia is one. One of the symptoms is not unlike it's unlike Alzheimer's where memory loss is not it. Okay, it's personality changes, behavioral changes, a lack of empathy, getting angry more so than normal. I mean, some people are just ordinarily angry. We're not talking about those people. We're talking about individuals that are calm most days. You call them, hey, they're chipper, and all of a sudden you say, wow, the sky is blue, and they're like, what do you mean the sky is blue? Who are you talking to? That
Mm.
is the kind of behavior that's symptomatic of frontal temporal dementia. Frontal temporal dementia is also what's known as a sexual deviant dementia, meaning somebody might start undressing in public. They may start doing things that are inappropriate in public with their body. That is attributed to frontal temporal impulse control because the frontal lobes control impulse, right? And so those are the frontal temporal dementia is ordinarily the dementia that is diagnosed um, in the younger onset field, so under the age of 65. Those, and so when we are looking for symptoms of the disease, uh, if you're a millennial, that's what you look for. When's the last time you had a calm conversation? When's the last time you were able to uh, figure out what your checkbook looked like, not due to memory, but because of other behaviors that come with the disease. OCD is one of the symptoms of frontal temporal dementia. And for those of you who don't know what OCD is, it's obsessive compulsive disorder.
Mm.
So that's when you go back in the house and you go back in the house and you walk out and you go back in the house. And this is something that you've not done ordinarily, right? Because OCD is also something that someone can be diagnosed with, but it is absolutely something that is a behavior of an individual living with frontal temporal dementia.
Wow. And so thinking about the typical like doctor's appointments that millennials are having. And so we're getting up there, we're slowly climbing climbing the age scale. But even someone who is in their 30s, right? The typical appointment, your annual physical, with your maybe your primary care doctor. And for those that don't even do that, it's like, oh, if I feel sick today, I might go to urgent care. But thinking about feeling some of those symptoms that you just shared with us, Is it enough to first raise them with your primary care physician? What would your recommendation be?
I would absolutely raise them with my PCP first. However, in that same conversation, I would be asking my PCP for an MRI or a CAT scan or a PET scan. The MRI is more likely. However, in that conversation, I would say, I would really like a brain scan. I would really like to see if there's something going on that is invisible to the naked eye. Can you please schedule me, if you have an HMO, there has to be a referral to a neurologist, to a specialist. But if you have a PPO, you can literally go on your website, find a neurologist and say, these are my symptoms. I would like to come in. Let me get an MRI. Because a neurologist will be able to tell you, one, if there's anything present in the brain that is irregular. And then two, if dementia is present, we'll be able to tell you and guide you as to what kind of dementia you have or your loved one has. And that is the most important thing that I can say today. Always find out if you have or your loved one gets a diagnosis of dementia, find out the kind of dementia, because it does make a difference. Just like if you got a diagnosis, if you had a diagnosis of lung cancer, you're going to need a different chemo than if you have brain cancer, right? If you have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's dementia or your loved one, and you get, there are different behavior modifications that you need to implement versus getting diagnosed with, let's say, vascular dementia. Mm-hmm. So the important piece is, if you're a millennial and you are having any of these symptoms or you think something is awry, find a neurologist. If you have an HMO, ask to be referred to one by your PCP. The neurologist will be able to guide and lead you, and then make sure that you know the kind of dementia that your loved one is living with.
Got it. We got a question in the chat. Does the neurologist have to accept your PPO?
You know what? I don't know the answer to that. I will tell you this, that every insurance company, health insurance company, has a website, and they will be able to tell you, the differences, like whether it's in network or out of network, if that's as much as I can expound on that.
Got it. Thank you for that question, Sonia. And for our viewers that are here with us live, if you have questions, just drop them in the comments and I will fuse them into this amazing conversation that I'm having. And I want to take a moment to make you aware of Maggie's website and where to find more information about her organization, Walk Into My World. Let me put the link back up for you. walkintomyworld.com is her website, and you can find more information there. In addition to her book that is making its rounds, it's called The Don'ts of Alzheimer's Dementia. So with that being said, about your book, Maggie, who is your ideal reader for that publication, and what's the one don't that you would say surprises people the most, or the one that's the most overlooked?
First of all, thank you. My book is for anyone that is a caregiver, family or otherwise, and any healthcare professional, because what it does is provide the don'ts of the don'ts of this disease. So oftentimes you'll hear, do this, do that, and there's a list of do's, right? But there is a very short list of don'ts. But at the end of the day, if you don't, pardon the pun, know them, then you are right back at square one. Right. And so with that being said, the don't that I think is the most important is using the word remember. I think it's so important to not use the word remember. Why do I say that? I say don't use the word remember because it is asking the brain to complete a task that it can no longer do. That it just can't do it. It's kind of like asking me to put a motor in a car. Why would you ask me to put a motor in a car? I can't put a motor in a car, because the brain cannot function on that level. So, you trying to make mom, dad, or otherwise remember your name is not going to make them memorize your name or remember your name. What it
Mhm.
is going to do is escalate them. Why? Because it's frustrating. Imagine asking someone asking you a question over and over and over again, and you don't know the answer. Let's just, you know, think about that asking an able mind person over and over and over again to do something that they can't do. That's what you do when you ask people, "Mom, you remember me? Mom, I'm married. Look at me. I'm your youngest child." And I always say, well, if they knew you were their youngest child, why would you have to ask them? Why would you have to tell them anything? But they don't know. So don't try to ask them to know, because they're not going to know. Because, especially, again, we're talking about Alzheimer's, it covers the part of the brain, it's called the hippocampus, and I'll make it very simplistic. I call it the safe box of the brain. Imagine going to a safe and not having the key. It's
Mhm.
fireproof. The kind of safe boxes they make these days. I mean, safes they make. You can't open it without the combination, without the key, without the disc, whatever it is. That's
Mhm.
what happens to the brain when individuals have Alzheimer's dementia. So, as much as you want them to access the memory, it's in that safe and you're not getting it back. And memory, and I'm going to throw this in there, and memory loss differs from forgetfulness. Two different things. Memory loss, let's talk about forgetfulness. Forgetfulness is being able to recall what you forgot, right? So you can go to the car and you say, "Oh man, I forgot my keys." You turn around, you go back in the house, you get the keys. Memory loss is walking outside to that car, not remembering where the keys are or what the keys are. So there's a total difference between the two. And a lot of times people say, "My mother had Alzheimer's and I forget." And it's okay that you forget. Forgetfulness is a part of aging. Memory loss is not.
Hmm. Wow, what a distinction, a powerful distinction, because we are busy people in the year 2026. Like, we are a busy people. There's always so much going on, especially as entrepreneurs, right? We're juggling so much, adulting, the business, and just trying to keep all of the things afloat. So I appreciate you framing that way, because I know there's plenty of people that are watching this live and on the replay that have had moments where they're like, "No, wait a minute now." Like, what is
Absolutely.
going on now? But now we have the distinction between forgetfulness, which is human nature, and then, as
Yes,
we said, comes with aging, which us geriatric millennials, we are, but I'll say we're doing it gracefully, versus
absolutely.
like memory loss. So I appreciate you sharing that in that way. And this is exactly why, like, you are the person to have this conversation with. You just have an eloquent way of like educating and enlightening us, but in a way that is not just authentic, but digestible and relatable. And I appreciate that about you. We have a question. So the scented vine, hey Amber, says, "I'm really interested in either preventing memory loss or preserving memories. Any insight or research into how to prevent that particular symptom?"
Okay, so right now, there's only one dementia that we know why it happens, and that's vascular dementia. That's the only one. Now, we know what happens with the dementias, but we don't know why. We don't know whether, you hit your head and it happens. We just don't know those things. So, to answer the question, preventable. I'm going to say that health, your health, high blood pressure, diabetes, all of those things work in conjunction with memory loss, right? Exercising, however, is preventative. Eating well. Now, I can't go into vegan eating, and I just can't. Not my expertise. But what I can tell you is that a healthy diet, a healthy weight, exercising daily, reading daily, doing puzzles daily will assist you in keeping memory. Now, will it prevent memory loss? I don't have the answer to that, and I don't know anybody who does.
Got it. Thank you for that question, Amber, and thank you for that insight. One of the things, so I had a chance to read through the book, The Don'ts of Alzheimer's Disease, Maggie's book, The Don'ts of Alzheimer's Disease. And I'll be honest with you, having witnessed it up front with my grandfather. So there was a season where I actually lived with my grandparents. I was trying to buy a home and I gave up my apartment and I moved in with my grandparents, which was supposed to be just for a couple of months while I was in the home buying process. And at the time, my grandfather had already been diagnosed, and the disease was starting to progress, but it was kind of like a norm, if you will. But moving into the home, I was able to see it up close and personal, and in ways that the regular person who he might come across at church or in the grocery store, like those little nuanced things that you just won't see until you're just around, like
Yes.
when the flip switch, when the switch flips. And so it was definitely a test of patience and just grace. It's an awful
Yes.
awful disease in the sense of how it just takes over your faculties and chips away at your executive function and also um, just your independence. But
Yes.
reading your book in kind of like a hindsight being 2020 type of fashion, there were some things I still learned some things. I learned quite a few things reading your book. I was educated on a number of items, but then there were some examples and phrases that you expounded upon that like had memories just flooding back like in real time. And so in some instances, it's like I know exactly what she's talking about, but I never had the language around it. And in some other things, it's just like, wow, I remember like observing this, and I wish I had even more patience and grace than I had back then to be able to support him, in a different way. And so I highly recommend getting the book. I'll put up Maggie's site again so that you can head there and grab a copy for yourself and your loved ones. It's walkintomyworld.com, but I definitely wanted to plug the book because I think every household needs it. Because at this point, at the rate in which, especially in the Black community, at the rate in which it's popping up in our lives and at younger ages as well, it's it's a necessary resource. So
Thank
Maggie,
you.
what do you're welcome. Given your expertise and the clientele that you serve and with like dementia care, is that the appropriate way to frame
Yes, you
your
can say that. Absolutely.
Okay. So as a dementia care expert, what would you say that caregivers wish that they had known before the crisis hit their loved one and before it became urgent?
I think, especially in our community, we need to look into long term care. Like, we need to find out about long term care, and we need to find out what the expectations of our loved ones are, right? So, does dad want to be buried? Does he want to be cremated? Does he want a eulogy? Those are things that we don't talk about in the Black community because God will provide, right? And that's the way, unfortunately or fortunately, that's the way that we view it. But as
Mhm.
caregivers, I think we need to, because at some point, we are going to be caregivers, whether it be for our aunties, our uncles, our parents. And we need to know where the documents are. We need to know what their wishes are. We need to know where their assets are because caregiving is not cheap. Some of us had to quit our jobs. My mother-in-law lived with us for 5 years. My husband had to retire when his mother came to live with us, right? And so we have to ensure that we have everything that we need to be as successful and as stress-free as we possibly can. And money can be a stressor, right? And so we need to know, does mom and dad have that? Are they do they want to stay in the home? And if they do, is it possible? And and if they don't want to stay in the home, what do they want in the place that they're going to live? Oftentimes, when I talk about this in communities, especially at assisted living communities, the thought is people of color, Black people, don't have the money to place individuals. No, that's not the case at all. The case is that we think that we give better care at home. And so, as a caregiver, get the training that you need. Pay for a training. Don't go to a volunteer training, because yes, those are good trainings, but pay for training so that someone can come in your home and tell you, oh, mom can't get in the shower because mom doesn't want to get in the shower, not because mom wants to stay dirty. That's not why. But if you knew why, if you know why your mother or your loved one doesn't want to take a shower, it will help you in assisting them when they can take a shower. One of the things that I say about my book, The Don'ts of Alzheimer's Dementia, is it's short. It's 40 pages with illustrations, right? And so we're not talking about picking up a book that's 420 pages. We're talking about a very small pocket-sized book that you can carry around. You can probably read this book in 20 minutes, and it tells you what it is that you need as a caregiver, and if this disease haunts your family or comes after your family.
I know we have some amens in the in the comments that align with what you share. Sonia said the cost of memory care in a community is extremely expensive and is usually private pay.
It is.
But and I've heard that a number of times in from persons within the community. Oh, we want to keep mom home. We don't want to put her in a facility, or we're trying not to put dad in a facility, or it's there's a particular content creator that I often see on TikTok, and the mom is in a facility just because she's so much to manage in the home, and so there's this up close and personal kind of like experience that she offers us by just documenting what it's like caring for a loved one who has dementia. And so just seeing both sides of the experience and like what that looks like, and even some of the concerns that the caregiver or the responsible party has as well, has been really enlightening over the years. So
You know what? I just want to add this. If you
yeah.
decide to place your loved one in an assisted living community, find out what the training is. Most states in the United States require only 4 hours of training for dementia care. Imagine that. 4 hours of training for dementia care. So find out what if they have been trained. You will also find out that 72% of individuals that work in assisted living communities do not have dementia training. They've not been to a certified course. They have not had hands-on training. And when I say hands-on training, that's different from on-the-job training. It's different from experiencing dementia because you care for someone. I'm talking formal training so you can differentiate between the dementias. So just make sure that that happens as well.
Got it. So if there's somebody that's watching this right now and they're here, whether they're live or on the replay, and they are really is borderline sitting with like a quiet concern and suffering in silence just because they feel overwhelmed with what is staring back at them in the face. Whether it's about themselves and maybe things that they're noticing, especially based on some of the things that you shared earlier and what signs and symptoms look like, or whether it's for someone that they love. Like, what should their immediate first or next step be? Uh-oh, did we freeze up? Uh-oh, I lost her. I'll give her a second to hop back on. Thank y'all so much for being here. Nicole, I see your question, and I am going to share that with her. There she is. Can you hear me okay?
Know what happened, but yes, I don't
Okay.
know what happened, but all right.
It's okay. Listen, technology is going to do what it's going to do, and we are just going to let the resistance make its attempt, and we're going to pick right back where we left off. It's a-okay. So we have a question. Oh, wait, I'll repeat the question that I asked you. So for that person that's kind of borderline, like they have quiet concern and is teetering with suffering in silence, right? Either about themselves and things that they're noticing,
Mhm,
especially
mhm.
with how you've enlightened us here, or whether it's about, someone that they love. What should their immediate first or next step be?
With someone that they love, I always say the first step is to build a geriatric squad. Build a team around you. When you find out that your loved one has been diagnosed with dementia, they need every part of their body examined. My mother-in-law used to say, "I got a doctor for every part." Yes, you do, honey. And so, a gerontologist, a neurologist, of course, first and foremost, a neurologist, a gerontologist, an endocrinologist, an oncologist, a podiatrist, a dentist, just a team, a team of ologists. That's what I always say. Nephrologists, urologists, especially a urologist, because UTI can progress dementia and look like dementia.
Mm,
So, especially in the elderly, that's what, UTIs are known for progressing the disease because they're missed and that pain progresses. Okay. So, make sure that you surround yourself, build a team for your loved one. And that way they can talk amongst themselves because most doctors don't, right? But if you have that team, then you can say, oh, the podiatrist is this. The second thing I will say is keep a composition notebook every day. It doesn't have to be detailed. It can say, Mom ate donuts for breakfast. Mom ate every day. Keep that composition book. Why do you say a composition notebook? Because unfortunately, things happen to our loved ones. That composition notebook, when you get on the stand, it says at the front of the book, most of them, 100 pages, right? And so I've had it where individuals have said, I put that in the book, or I didn't put that in the book, or let's see it in the book. Because if it has 100 pages, it still has 100 pages. You didn't skip, you didn't do anything. It's all information that you have kept. So it's very important. When you go to the doctor, get a composition notebook. I had a neurologist tell me about 2 or 3 years ago. He said, what's fearful for any doctor when you walk into their office? Someone that is taking notes. And I said, why would you be fearful of that? And they said, it's not a fear, it's more of let me get this right. I said, well, don't you normally want to get it right? And they were like, well, yeah. He was like, yeah, I want to get it right. He said, but if you got that notebook, I'm definitely going to be cautious as to what it is that I say to you, why I say
mm,
it, when I say it. He said, because now it's documented and I want to make sure that you get it right. So while you're writing, I'm looking over your shoulder saying, I didn't say that. But he said,
mm.
if you come in there just arbitrarily, he said, it's not that I'm not going to tell you. He said, but I'm not going to take as much time with you. And I appreciated him saying that because, I had my book with me anyway. So, but, but I think it's important. Walk in that office with the doc with a composition notebook.
Got it. Question from the comments. Who do you serve, and how does someone know they need to contact you?
Who do I serve? I serve family caregivers. I serve healthcare professionals. So for family caregivers, I would either uh, contact with you on Zoom and tell you and have a family forum if your loved one um, uh, if you need care for your loved one and your sister or your brother lives out of town, we would have a family forum on Zoom and I would talk to them about how they could support you. So I give classes on how can I be a better distant caregiver. I have classes on how do I take care of my loved one living with blank this dementia because your loved one may be living with vascular or frontal and those are different behavior modifications. I give those courses. I train healthcare professionals. I train doctors. I train lawyers. I train custodians. Anybody in the dementia community that comes in contact, I think first of all, I think everybody should be trained because everybody's going to come in contact with somebody living with dementia. And so, and you can contact me on my website. And depending on where you are, sometimes I come and do in-home trainings for 72 hours so that you see the hands-on and the do's and don'ts of what happens with someone living with dementia.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for asking, Nicole. Maggie, thinking about the younger onset dementia,
Mhm.
as someone who, and what I appreciate about you in this space is that you survived it. Like you've been there, done it, walked miles in it, laced up the sneaks, probably had to buy a couple pair, um, and lived to tell about it, right? In a way that is not only educational, but it's enlightening, and it's necessary. So, given your vantage point and your perspective, someone who might be navigating younger onset dementia, what does real support look like for someone that's navigating it? And just as importantly, what does it not look like?
So, what real support looks like is recognizing that my brain no longer functions the way that it used to. Don't talk to me like I'm a child, although my behavior may exhibit that of a child. There are
Mhm.
ways to speak to people. Words do matter. If it gets to a place where I am incontinent, don't say, I'm going to change your diaper because adults don't wear diapers. They wear disposable briefs. If we're in public and you think I'm doing something inappropriate, have a card, which my business gives, and it says, I'm living with this dementia. These are the symptoms because it's important. Don't be ashamed. Take me out. One of the things I say in my book is don't hide me, get support, because I could walk about any day. And if I walk about and people don't know that I have dementia, if my neighbors don't know and I'm walking about and I don't know how to get back home, if they don't know because you haven't told anyone because you're ashamed, embarrassed, or whatever the case may be, that's a hazard to my health. And depending on what state you live on, it may be a hazard to your health because it could be considered, elder abuse, right? And so when you are in that, for me, make sure you are cautious of the conversations that you have. I remember um, uh, a hospice worker coming over and talking in front of me about how I wasn't going to be around in a year and a half, 2 years. Little did she know the God I served. However, at the end of the day, because I had a severe speech impediment, I was legally blind. They thought I was mute and dumb, but I understood what was happening. I just couldn't verbalize or vocalize what I needed to. So be mindful of what you say around me. If you think I'm living with younger onset dementia, make sure that you do activities with me that are appropriate. I don't want a doll baby. You know why I don't want a doll baby? Because I'm not a child. However, with Alzheimer's, right, you can give me a doll baby in the very latter stages. But the reason why I keep talking about make sure you know the kind of dementia is because if you give someone a doll baby when they are living with frontal temporal lobe dementia and they are, let's say, 47 years old, you might get hurt because frontal temporal dementia is also a violent dementia. And so, why would you give me a doll baby? So treat me with dignity and respect. It's going to be difficult because I'm going to say things that are inappropriate. I'm going to say things that you may anticipate a toddler saying. I may say things that you may anticipate hearing on a porn channel, but just know, as I say in my book, it's not me, it's the disease talking. And so, if we learn to address the disease as caregivers, then we recognize that it's not our loved one doing and acting in that manner. It
Mm.
is the disease. So as a caregiver, that's what I would say. Now, what would I do as far as caregiver support, real caregiver support? I love us. I love our community. Please don't tell me that you're going to pray for me and don't act on it. One of the things that I say all the time is, you know, Jesus prayed for the 5,000, and then guess what he did? He fed them. So just don't say, I'm going to pray for you, because with that prayer is also a call to action, which
Mhm.
means, can you bring me, we all eat, right? Give me a post-it card, or Instacart card, or give me something that I can use for my loved one. I may not be able to go out. Show me how to use Instacart. I may have never used it before, and millennials, of course, most of them are up on it, but there may be millennials that aren't. When I go out, come with me. Now, one of the things that I say, and I get a lot of flack back about this in the community, I could care less. But at the end of the day, especially millennials are used to traveling and going out. Older people, not so much. I mean, we did travel, right? But millennials go here, go there. Make sure that as a millennial, keep it real as a caregiver. Don't lose those relationships. Don't expect Carrie to call you just because your mother is living with this disease or that disease, because at the end of the day, did Carrie always call you, or was it going back and forth? Don't lose relationships over caregiving. But real support to me in the dementia community is a call to action. Act on it. Just don't pray for me. Pray for me, but in the meantime, do for me, because they go hand in hand.
Speaking of act on it, like I was going to save this until later in the conversation before we wrap, but I think this is the perfect time to throw this in here. Um, a question that has come up for me since you kind of gave like the intro to your world and who you are and your goal of reaching 1 million people. How can we help you? How can we, and all of us listening, help you get to the million?
For my community, for our community, I find that churches are where we are. I don't care what kind of church it is, wherever we are, the barbecues, I will come and talk at your barbecue. I will. Why will I do that? Because at the end of the day, there are not a lot of people like me in our community talking about this disease, and there should be. There should be just as many commercials about dementia as there are about diabetes. There should be just as many conversations had about dementia as are being had about sickle cell, lupus, fibromyalgia, all of those, that are very relevant to our community. It's scary because and this is the thing, because it only affects mostly our community, sickle cell, diabetes, lupus, then you see representation of us, right? But for dementia, you don't see representation because we're not telling our stories, mainly because we don't know we're living with dementia. And we don't know that our loved ones are living with dementia because they always act like that. And so for me, I will come and speak, I will come and talk. I mean, again, I want us to know. I want us to know because when we do better, the prayer is, when we know better, we do better. We don't always, but that is absolutely my prayer. And so I just want you to know that I'm out here. It's not many of us that look like us, but we're out here. I'm here. You can call, you can text, you can go to my website. You can follow me on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram. And by all means, purchase my book because it does look like us. It's representative of us, and it allows you to uh, see just how in depth dementia is. And it's written from a point of view of someone that is living with dementia. And the last thing I want to leave you with is recognize that I call dementia Demi, that lives in our loved ones, that when Demi acts up, that's not our loved one. That really is the brain doing what it wants to do.
Got it. Speaking of the book, one of the things that struck a chord with me was you mentioned or you suggest not to build your life around caregiving, but instead to build caregiving around your life. Now, it's not hard to say but I know for a fact that's a lot harder to do than it is to say. So the person that kind of like resonates with like my thoughts on the matter, just like that's a lot easier said than done. Like help a sister out. How would you encourage someone that kind of hears that and it's like, well, that sounds good. I would love to. Like, I don't even know where to start to kind of center me, but also handle the responsibility of caregiving that's now part of my my norm, right? But not losing myself, the essence of myself. How, what do you got for us?
So my company motto is self-care is the best care for whom we care. And
Mm,
I will tell you that these last 5 years, my mother-in-law transitioned last year in March. And now, mind you, that's my company motto, right? And I had no idea. Like my husband and I still did date nights. We still tried to get away. We still tried to do these things. It was not enough. It was not enough. When my mother-in-law transitioned, I am still getting to know my husband because I missed 5 years of us, right?
mm,
And so be steadfast, maintain those relationships. Don't feel like, well, she knows I'm taking care of my mother. I'm not calling her. No, no, call her. Make sure that when you go out, and it's going to be extremely difficult. I had a girlfriend, my girlfriend that I would go out to lunch with. We're not talking about your mother today. I don't want to hear it. We're not doing it. And the first couple of times I was like, what? She's like, I don't want to hear it. We're going to talk about you, us, and what's going on, and what television show you watch. And when that happened, when I started maintaining that relationship and making sure that I kept that relationship in the midst of caregiving, then what I found was I'm not having such a difficult time going back and revisiting and rebuilding and doing the things that friends and relationships do, because relationships are what still you still need relationships. In
mhm,
reference to, if it's a spouse, make sure, because like I said, we still did date night, but we were still looking at our phone, looking at those cameras to make sure, Mill was okay. We were still doing that, you know. And right at the last part, right before she transitioned, we then started putting our phones down. Like, we have a caregiver there, she'll be fine. Like, it'll be all right. They'll call us.
mhm,
But for many years, we didn't do that. Maintain those relationships. Take care of yourself. Go to, get a massage. Go away for a couple of days. Whatever it is that you need to do that you've been doing. And this is what I say. Whatever you've been doing, you're not going to be able to do it. If you got a massage 4 times a week, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. Cut it in half and try to work towards it. The goal is to stay in the form and to stay with the concept of normalcy. Try very hard, because when they transition, you're still there.
mhm,
And if something happens to you, then what? So make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Take time, be selfish. I tell my caregivers, be selfish. They'll be okay, because fortunately or unfortunately, they're
mhm,
not going to remember.
mm, that's good. Now, besides reaching out to you for expert dementia care support, what are some other resources that families and individuals that are navigating this space of dementia for either themselves or their loved ones that they often don't realize they have, like kind of like at their disposal? They don't even know that it exists. What are some of those common resources?
So there is an association for every dementia. What
Mm,
I want individuals to know is, if your loved one has been diagnosed with a specific dementia, find that specific dementia organization. So if your loved one has been diagnosed with frontal temporal dementia, don't go to the Alzheimer's Association classes. You know why? Because those behavior modifications are not going to work, most of them, for your individual living with FTD. So they have a frontal temporal dementia association. They have Dementia Society, which covers the gamut. They have the Alzheimer's Association. They have the Vascular Dementia Mixed Association. So there's an association for every dementia that you or your loved one will be diagnosed with. Reach out to those specific organizations. The other thing I will say is, look in your community, because a lot of community, have support groups. When your loved one or you is diagnosed with this disease, find the support group for that dementia. If your loved one is diagnosed with FTD, don't go to the Alzheimer's Association support group, because the support is going to be different. The experiences are going to be different. And please don't become Google doctors. And if you're on TikTok, make sure that the people that you're listening to on TikTok are experts, not the caregivers that are experiencing whatever dementias that their loved one has, because your loved one may not have that dementia. And the chances are they have not been trained to take care of their loved ones. They're taking it day by day, and their stories are intriguing, heartbreaking, warming, but they're not an expertise.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for that. Um, I think we're gonna have to do a part two at some point, Maggie, because this is this is good to me. It's good to the people. I hope you're enjoying it as well. Just
I
being in
am.
the space with people. We're gonna kind of bring this thing around the bend here shortly, but we do have another question from someone who is watching. So Sonia says, "What do you do when your loved one is in the early stages and recognizes her issues, and they want you right there with them all the time? They get sad if you have an appointment to go on. She's the only child in the beginning of this."
Okay, so let me just make sure I'm understanding the question. So your loved one is in the early stages of which dementia, because it does make a difference before I give you some advice. And then she recognizes that she has dementia. When you say she recognizes it, is it because she recognizes something different, or someone has told her that she has dementia? That's two questions that I have for you. And then it says they want you right there with them because they're scared. And that goes with all of the dementias, right? They are, and yes, they're going to get sad. And I don't know if you have children, but I'm going to use this analogy. Imagine when you drop your child off at the daycare, they're sad that you're gone, but they'll be okay. It takes a minute, but they'll be all right. And it's the same thing. Of course, they're going to be sad. Let them be sad. That's an emotion that we all feel. It's okay for them to be sad. We are testing now. When you say we are testing now, what does that mean? Because it takes a brain scan.
Hmm. Sonia might be typing. Son Owen said this is awesome. Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
see. We'll see what
Okay.
if Sonia comes back in the chat. So one of the things that I want to kind of like connect the dots, because to someone who knows me and knows my platform, I talk about a lot about entrepreneurship. The Six Figure Quitter is the name of my book. I help six-figure earners transition out of their 9 to 5 without regret. And so this conversation might seem a little bit like out of left field for the work that I normally do and the things that I normally speak about. But it actually is like aligned in kind of an obtuse way. And so one of the things that I was able to learn, and you kind of shared a little bit with us in the beginning, I think you glossed over it. I got the deep think part of it from you when we had a chance to converse some time ago. But they got the Cliff Notes version of just like what your background was, career wise, and some things that you have experience in as a career professional before life happening, before
Yes.
Demi showed up, right?
Yes.
And before you pivoted into doing this work that you do. And so one of the things that I talk about in my book, I share the 7 P's to transitioning out of your 9 to 5 without regret. And the second one is purpose and finding your purpose. And one of the ways I was able to free myself from my 6-figure good government job, I went on my own purpose journey. I had to figure something out. And one of the things that I learned in navigating purpose myself was that the things that we experience in life and overcome and live to tell about, we may
Yes.
look unscathed, but probably with hell on wheels while we were going through it, are the things that we have been equipped with to help other people come through it a lot quicker, a lot sooner, and maybe even a lot easier because of the lessons that we learned. That's a part of like our purpose. That is what I believe. I'm not forcing that belief on anybody else, but I've seen some things and I've learned some things, and I also have experienced enough to know that the heavy things that we experience, while the weight of it is heavy, he won't put more on us than we can bear. And if we can find a way to reframe the burden and shine a little light on it, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. There's often something that we can offer to other people, which is what purpose is all about. Like, we're here to do life together. Like, I have something that you need, Maggie has something that I need, and when we align and we lock arms, and that's just a testament to us literally being on this live tonight. Like, that's a whole nother tangent, right? But
Absolutely.
there's something that we all have, and a lot of times the thing that we become an expert in is the thing that we felt was going to take us out. And so I love the fact that, you leaned in, you didn't keep it to yourself, which you could have, right? Or just your loved ones. You decided to use it. Well, you kind of made a promise to God. So I'm glad you kept.
I did.
I'm glad
I
you
did.
you held up on your end of it. But I'm glad he did too, in meeting you halfway. And so I just love how you have leaned into purpose, in a way, and recognizing that this is so much bigger than you, and you are a vessel. You are a testimony. You are a testament to what's
Yes.
possible, and that even if younger onset dementia knocks at someone's door, it's not the end. There is hope. There are resources. There is Maggie Memory and her team.
Yes.
And there are conversations to be had, and there's a way to be proactive about it. And so I really appreciate you and your spirit and your light, for that. So let's see.
Thank
Sonia
you so
gave
much.
us Sonia says she had an EEG and PET scan, and that she's on a wait list for a neuropsychologist.
Okay, so with a PET scan, that should have rendered the diagnosis. Period. PET scan is by far the best, I'm going to say, brain X-ray that one can have. You can have a CAT scan, you can have an MRI, but PET scan is top level. So if a neurologist um, performed a PET scan, when he read that PET scan, he or she or they should have been able to tell you if your loved one is living with dementia. I am not a medical doctor, right? But I could look at a PET scan and point out areas of dementia, of whatever kind of dementia it was. So there's no doubt in my mind that with a PET scan, a neurologist should have been able to walk out after he looked at the results and told you, oh, your loved one is living with this kind of dementia. Absolutely. And if they didn't, find a new neurologist.
And is that the kind of question type of question that people who find you, that they typically maybe like land on your webpage and book a call or something? Is this kind of where like that conversation starts? Is this a perfect example?
Yes,
Okay.
that is, I mean, I love that one that you've already reached out to have that PET scan done. That is exceptional because PET scans are the most expensive, and hospitals, insurance companies do not like paying for them. They don't. Um, there are some states in the nation where if an elderly patient falls, they have to, by law, have a PET scan or a CAT scan or an MRI. Not all, but some. And so I love that you reached out and got your loved one a PET scan. They should immediately know. Like, they should immediately know. That's like if somebody takes your temperature, and I always talk in analogies because that people understand them more. It's like if you take my temperature, I don't need to wait 2 days to find out what it is. It registers right there, right? That's the same concept with a PET scan, an MRI, or a CAT scan. Same concept. They should be able to tell you right then, like, your loved one is living with this kind of dementia. This is the part of the brain that is covered. We see plaques. or we see shrinkage in the frontal temporal lobe, they should be able to tell you that, because I could, and I'm not a doctor. I don't, because I'm not a doctor, but I'm just letting you know that your neurologist should be able to tell you that immediately.
I love it. So I think that's the perfect segue, Maggie. How can viewers find you, get the book, and stay connected? And share anything that you
They,
got coming up too.
they can find me on Walk Into My World. My number is there. My team is there. My book is there. Um, and so I encourage you to get our book. And let me just be very clear. Our bulk purchases are out of this world. I just want, I don't need to beg for anything, because the bulk purchase, God has just said, okay, this is what we're gonna do. And so he did his thing with my bulk purchases. So I'm not hurting for funds, okay? Wasn't before, but just want to put that out there. But in addition to that, for me, I wrote the book for us. I wrote the book so that you could pick it up, put it in your pocket, and do what's in the best interest of your loved one. It's the first of 8 books. So I also have a book coming out, The Don'ts of Frontal Temporal Dementia, The Don'ts of Vascular, The Don'ts of Lewy Body. So it's a whole series of books, 4 by 6, under 40 pages with illustrations. You can find me on the website and let me know. The team will reach out to you to say, okay, did you need family care? Do you need healthcare professional training? Like what? Because they differ. Because what I can say to a family caregiver, what a family member can say to my loved one, and what a professional can say to my loved one are two different things. They are sometimes borderline abuse, depending on what is said. And so family caregivers get a different training. Like I said, I do distant caregiving. So maybe your loved one lives in a different state and you don't know how to support them because you're not there. There are absolutely things that you can do. I offer 15 core roadmap that you can take if you're a distant caregiver. If you don't know the kind of dementia that your loved one is living with, if you don't know how to build a geriatric team, we do all of that at Walk Into My World. And we have the experience. Like I said, my experience covers the gamut. In addition to that, I just started Dementia Court, and that is will be on TikTok and YouTube. And what it is dispelling myths that are put out by caregivers, that are put out by experts they believe in the community. And I make sure that I provide the research and the knowledge. And it's very short, very 3-minute clips of just, dressing up like somebody that said something that they shouldn't have said, and correcting them to make sure that as a caregiver or a professional that's not the way that it goes. I also have a podcast called Dementia Disrupted. My co-host and I, Madupe Rotimi, we talk about entrepreneurship and what that looks like once your loved one has been diagnosed with dementia and you're an entrepreneur. Like you don't have, the support from corporate because it's you. And so what do you do? What does it look like? How do we help? What organizations can we look at? What grants, and I think that's something that we should talk about, because a lot of us are now entrepreneurs. We're no longer in the corporate sector. And that looks different for us making our own money versus getting a paycheck from corporate, every week. I'm trying to speak at as many churches as I possibly can, as many speaking events as I possibly can. I'm trying to do that because we need to talk about dementia like we talk about the common cold. We need to talk about dementia like we talk about diabetes. And I think it's important.
The Sensitive Vine said, Maggie Memory, you are moving in your purpose. I'm excited to watch God move through you in this ministry.
Thank you so
Listen,
much.
if Maggie was on your pew, she pierced your heart in some way, or you just enjoyed hearing her share her heart from an educator standpoint when it comes to spreading the gospel of all things, dementia, especially for us millennials, but and all of the things we talked about, do me a favor and drop some thank you Maggies in the comments.
Thank you.
You are nothing short of amazing. I feel like you you like this. I should have just taken myself off the screen and just asked the questions behind the scene and given you the entire screen, because you are made for the TV, you are made for the camera. You are made for having this conversation, and you do it with such grace and such eloquence. And I think it's beautiful to witness. I'm grateful to be a conduit to kind of sharing you and helping you hit that 1 million. Don't forget, y'all, she's trying to reach 1 million people, at least 1
Yes.
million people. And so I want to charge everybody that's here with doing what they can to share information about Maggie, share her website, walkintomyworld.com, share her book, The Don'ts of Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's dementia. The don'ts of Alzheimer's dementia.
The don'ts of Alzheimer's dementia. And anybody that you may know of, sometimes it's just sharing a resource. And I'll share this quick story. So I was working at the FBI, and one of my girlfriends was also there as well. And so we kind of grew up in the organization together. And so she knew I was living with my grandparents. She knew my grandfather had Alzheimer's. But another coworker, who's kind of like a big brother to me now, one of his family members was also dealing with Alzheimer's, and we both lived in Baltimore. She didn't, but he did, and I did. She connected us. He shared resources with me that I then shared with my grandmother. And it was just kind of like, not even kind of like, but it was God sent. And so I say that because sometimes when we share with other people, instead of suffering in silence, which we do a good job of as Black people, and just kind of like sharing and being honest about like what we're experiencing in not just our own lives, but our extended families, we never know who has the key to the door that we need to open that we don't even know
Yes.
exists. And so the more that we can share, whatever we may know, this might not be for you if you're listening, right? But this might be for somebody that you're going to talk to in 3 days. They're going to share with you that one of their loved ones is going through something. You're going to say,
Yes.
oh my gosh, I was just watching this video with Maggi Memory. Go to her website and buy her book. And that is how we're going to help you get to your 1 million. If I need to bring her back, y'all, say part 2 in the chat, because I feel it in my spirit. I gotta find a way to get her back. But I also want to say this: one of the places that she didn't share that she lives, so is Maggie Memory on TikTok, right?
Yes.
What's your YouTube page?
It's the same at Maggie Memory.
On
hmm
YouTube.
Uh,
And so
yes.
how I met Maggie Memory was on a platform called Barter Black. And the founder
Yes.
is actually in the chat, at least she was earlier, Nicole Murphy. And so she's also offering expert dementia care. She has a listing on the Barter Black platform as well. If you're interested in a Barter Black, just type Barter Black in the comments, and I'll come back through and look at all the comments later. And I'll send you my personal referral link. But there's an opportunity for you to engage with her on that platform, as well as many of the other um, founders and creators who have offerings and listings over there to kind of help make life a little bit easier, but leveraging the art of bartering on there as well. So Maggie, I cannot thank you enough. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you for just allowing me to serve you in this way. And if I can be of service to you in the future, you have all my information. You know where to find me, and I'm going to answer when you call.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to plug my book one more time. Here it
Yes,
is.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
I
ma'am.
always like to say that you will see us represented in this book. You will see our braids. You will see our names. I think that's important for our community.
Got it. And I'm showing you the last little bit of love. You're going to reach more than 1 million people. His reach is limitless. Thank you,
Yes.
Maggie Memory, educational and informative. Part 2. Oh, it looks like the part 2s have it, Maggie. So we gotta figure we gotta figure this out. And yes, shout out to Barter Black. Thank you, Maggie. All right, y'all. Well, that is a wrap. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that you feel like we missed for part
No,
1?
I just want to thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your wisdom and your knowledge, and thank you for your platform. I truly appreciate you.
The pleasure is mine. All right, y'all have a blessed night. And for all things dementia and expert dementia care, 2 words. Say it with me: Maggie Memory. And that's Maggie, Maggi.
That's right. That's right.
All right,
Thank
y'all.
you
See
so
y'all
much.
next time.
Bye.